Welcome to the Elokus podcast, and we are now about to start. This is class number 16 in the discourse B'Shasha Hegdimu. In the discourse Naso es Rosh, which is the fourth discourse in the overall book of B'Shasha Hegdimu, 5672. We are holding in chapter 14, and this is the third class in chapter 14. So we had just completed the idea that the light, has already a light, even before it goes into vessels, has already some of the, in a very hidden, abstract way, has already a connection to whatever the vessel is going to imprint upon it to a much greater degree. The reason the vessel is able to imprint upon it on the light is because the light itself has already a connection to whatever that vessel is going to be. And even when, but the distance between the two, the distance between the limitation, the definitions when they're in the vessel, and the subtle limitations and definitions when they are in the light, is so vast that you wouldn't even notice that the light has any of those characteristics. And he's using the example of how intelligence, there is vesselable intelligence, which means intelligence that works in the most concrete example he gave from that. Although we discussed how it exists higher and higher and higher, but the most closest to us, our example, is our intelligence through our human brain, physical brain, and our intelligence versus our intelligence when it's still in the soul, prior to it, when a bodiless soul is experiencing its knowledge and its intelligence. It is in a complete different scale than the knowledge we have. It's not only more, it's completely different. It's in the spiritual. It's not in time and space, and it almost would be that to any serious scientist, a person who uses their mind and very much is an intellectual in this world, if you would speak to a soul and try to hear the reasonings and the logics of a soul, he would dismiss it completely as almost like not science, not reasonable, not logic, because the experiences of that lofty logic doesn't even seem like logic to a more concrete logic that happens in the mind, that happens in our physical minds. And the same, he also showed us how it exists on the high, in the spiritual worlds as well, even on wherever there's vessels, like in the level of the Sfirot, including even Chachma, which has already a vessel. The intelligence over there cannot conceive the intelligence of the Or itself before it goes into vessels, and primarily the source of that Or, which is in Keser, which is in the crown, which he called, remember, Moach Stima, the considered Moach, which when something is delivered directly from there, not processed through the lower vessels, it doesn't seem like intelligence at all. And that's why God could not communicate with Moshe's intelligence, because Moshe's intelligence was plugged into to intelligence that's already in vessels. And this was coming from a place that's above vessels, and therefore pure light, pure intelligence in its most abstract form, that appears to me that God is just being illogically stubborn and not with a reason, but it does have a reason, but not a reason, but a level of reason that any type of container, even the most highest sublime container, could not process. That's the idea. Which means that the Or, let's see, this is bringing out the point that this is going to be a very important point to follow as we're moving through this Maamor, is that although we're explaining that even in the oiros they're not pshutim, they're not completely simple, we have to still understand and appreciate that they are completely, in other words, you can't say, oh, the vessels are limited and the lights are limited. No. You can't even say that in one breath. The limitations of the vessels are really very, very true limitations. But the limitations and the definitions in the light are hardly limitations. And they hardly exist, although they exist. And not only, and here's a very important thing, the only reason eventually when these lights will come into the vessels, the lights themselves will become like the vessel. For example, the reason why our essential intelligence of the soul, when God decides that our soul has to go into a body, and our entire consciousness is experienced as we process our energies through our physical vessels, beginning with the physical brain. The reason why it's going to be suddenly so limited and so metamorphosized into a physical human, where it, as we discussed yesterday, it perceives the substance of the world, physicality, as real, and the spiritual it becomes completely unknown. So it has such a dramatic change, but yet the reason why the vessels are able to do such a job on this power is because even in the abstract power, it has a connection to the later vessels. If it wouldn't have a connection to the vessels, that means if the light of Chachma would not be Chachma, would not have the flavor of Chachma, then even when it would go into the vessels, it would remain free and clean and unvesselable. The reason it becomes so tainted in the vessel is because of its origins. Now, if over here, one has to see the parallels, and it's the same idea that we discussed in chapter 13. The reason why the emotions become so imprinted onto an idea when they come into the minds of Hillel and Shammai, which would be comparison to the vessels of kindness and severity, is because even in the abstract idea, there are hidden, subtle, undetectable emotions. Remember? Same idea, but now we're taking it on a higher step. Then we were talking about intellect versus emotions, and now we're talking about pre-intellect versus intellect. Okay. Now, by the way, for those of you who follow my other classes, we've been learning this amazing idea. And Thursday night, there's 2 classes that you can see on YouTube, on my channel. It is called A Bucket of Infinity. And over there, we're talking and I'm going to give a class about that tonight again. So it's going to be class number 3. We're talking about part of the class was talking about this transition from Chachma Stima, from the concealed wisdom, which is the wisdom that we say like beyond vessels, and how that translates as it comes down into Chachma Ilah, into the higher Chachma, which is already the Chachma, the wisdom as it is in vessels, and how it's only through a tiny little hair. The energy that passes from Chachma Stima is considered so minuscule and is indicating of how far it is. The experience of Chachma in vessels to the Chachma as it is in its essence above vessels. That's the idea. Now we're holding by the parentheses. Now it's interesting. These last few chapters, I think primarily starting chapter 13, maybe a little earlier even, and 14, is really that he's bringing, and almost word for word, the writings of his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, third Chabad Rebbe, in Oira Torah Inyanim. There's a Maamor, Lahavin Inyan Oira in Seif. And he is quoting his grandfather, and when he gets to the parentheses is where the Rebbe, Rashab, the author, is kind of expounding and giving his own, giving some commentary on. And this is one of the points where he's going to do that now. Venera inyan bezeh, and it appears to be the idea, and this is as follows. The light of Chachma. Lihiyois, since. Now, so before we learn the parentheses, I want to, it'll be easier if we can see where he's going with this. What he's going to now discuss is three phases in the intellectual experience. The one closest to us is the intellect when it fully manifests in the vessels. The or when it goes into the keli. And then it picks up the limitations and definitions of the vessel. And it becomes, in terms of, let's say, a soul going into a body, it becomes human intelligence versus the spiritual intelligence of the soul. That's when it goes into a vessel. But then there is the light itself prior to it going into a vessel. The light prior to going to its vessel is very abstract. However, this light that's eventually going to go into a vessel comes from somewhere. It comes from the power of Chachma that's before it's light. The power of Chachma, the essential power of Chachma, of wisdom, of intelligence, that's in the soul itself. So he's going to bring us now to our awareness three dimensions. There is the essence of the Chachma that's in the soul. There is, and that's not called the Or, that's called Shoresh, the Shoresh of Chachma, the root of Chachma. Now, we'll see in a minute. Then there is the illumination of that. There is an Or of that. As that is shining outward, it's an illumination of Or, which he's going to explain is not the substance of the Chachma itself. It's only a ray, which a ray is always considered a nether part of it, a very limited, or similar to what we were learning in the Thursday night classes. We were learning how the Chachma Stima, the concealed Chachma, now by the way, the essential Chachma of the soul, the essential, not the ray of it, not the light of Chachma, but the essential Chachma in the soul is called Chachma Stima, the hidden Chachma, because it's hidden completely in the soul. Now that is the source for the Or HaChachma, for the light of Chachma. And in the Maamor we're learning on Thursday night, we were discussing this idea that that's what the Chachma Stima, what the concealed Chachma is delivering to the Chachma, to the Or, to the light, passing it into the consciousness, and which will eventually go into the Keli, as we said, is only coming through a hair. A tiny little tidbit. It's like an external ray of it, a crumb of it, if you might say. So there is, second stage will be the Or of Chachma, the light of Chachma, before it goes into the vessels, which he's going to now say is also beyond intelligence as we know it. The Chachma Stima, the initial Chachma, the Chachma in the soul itself, is completely in the abstract of the abstract of the abstract, on a level that we wouldn't even call it Chachma. We wouldn't even call it intelligence. Yet it is the essence of intelligence, but utterly unknowable to our conceivable mind. Now, even the ray of that, because it is a ray, it is an Or, it is a reflection, it is a radiance of that Chachma. The Or of the Chachma, the light of the Chachma, before the light of the wisdom, before it goes into a Keli, before it goes into a vessel, is also abstract and pashut, and is also beyond our definition of wisdom and knowledge and understanding and logic. It's only when it goes into the vessel, that's when it becomes the type of chachma, the type of wisdom that we can understand, process in our minds. However, important to note, now, in other words, he's going to explain over Gewalt, meaning something really so beautiful. The reason why the light of Chachma, which in essence is so abstract and so pure, The reason why it becomes tainted into the world of Chachma, once it goes into our Kalim, once it goes into our vessel, and it becomes limited forms of logic that we can crunch in our mind and our physical brains, is because, as we were saying, because it's Chachma. That's very important. It goes along the lines that we're learning the whole time. The light must be able to be, the vessel can only grab the light if the vessel has something to grab on that is similar to the vessel. Albeit it is so subtle. Remember we used the example how when Shammai and Hillel are trying to grab the idea and they're finding the tiny little hair, like the black hair, the white hair we discussed, right? Remember that? It's like you have to find, in the abstraction, the brain has to be able to find some of the hidden cells of Chachma that are in the light. And because it's there, that's why this energy is able to later become thickened, if you might say, into a human logical experience as we experience our sight, our intelligence and our mind. So what we're going to come out with over here is very interesting, that the the light. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. This is very abstract stuff, so let's work slowly. But here's the thing. When the physical brain, which element of the physical brain the physical mind is able to latch on to this abstract chachma and anchor it down and thicken it. But that's only in the ray, in the light that's coming from the source. The source itself never goes into the vessel. The essence of Chachma, as it is in the soul, the Chachma Stima itself never gets down into the Chachma Hagaluya, into revealed Chachma. That doesn't happen. A ray of it. However, now, it comes out that this ray, this middle stage, this number 2 stage, serves as a communicator between the essence of the chachma of the soul, essence of the wisdom of the soul, and the vessels. It's a go-between. And he's going to explain, and interesting, this light, it's light, it's not vessel. Later it goes into the vessel and becomes processed in the vessel. This light, since it's a go-between between the essence of the wisdom of the soul and the experienced wisdom in our vessels, to which side is it closer? Is it more reflective of its source, or is it closer to the vessels? We say it's only a ray of the source. So you might argue and you might say it's closer to the vessels. Or you might say that since it's a ray of the source, its an essence still has the quality of the source. What's the difference between the quality of the source and the quality of the vessels? The quality of the vessels is its chunkiness, its definitions, its limitations. It's very defined, which you can call a quality because it's grounded. The quality of the source is its limitlessness, its abstraction. So the light that's going in between, which one is it closer to? The oir itself, before it's nislabish pikeli. There is the makar of the oir, the source of the light. There is the oir, there is the light, and there is the oir that bislapshus pikeli that goes into a keli, that goes into the vessel. So the light that goes in between, is it closer to the source, more reflective of the source, or closer to the vessel? So he says over here, it's closer to the source. And that means before it goes into the vessel, it is so much more abstract. It reflects abstraction, it doesn't have, and therefore, to the human intellectual experience, a light of intelligence that's not in vessels doesn't even seem like intelligence. Just like its quintessential source in the soul itself is not a discernible, definable force of logic. Although it's the seeds and It's the true power of intellect, but utterly above it. Okay? Now that we have that structure, let's read it inside. And it appears the idea in it as follows. The light of Chachma, since. Again, now when he says the Oira Chachma, he means number 2. Okay, the number 3 is the vessels. Number 1 is the source of Chachma in the source of Chachma in the soul itself. Not the light, but the source of that light, which we call Chachma Stima, the hidden Chachma. That's number 1. Number 2 is the energy from there, the illumination from there. Okay? And that the B'chinas Oira Chachma, the light of Chachma, Lihiyoy, since. Shegam Bishar Shai, also in its root. Hu B'chinas Chachma is Chachma Dig, as we said earlier, in the soul itself, or in the power of Keter, in the power of whatever, above the pre-energy. There are hidden sphirot, are hidden powers, and including the power of Chachma. Al Kain, therefore, ha'ara hanim, albeit that we said that it doesn't even, to a logical mind, you wouldn't even get, you would taste it, you would say, this is not logic. Like Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to taste that logic, and he said, this is not logic, this doesn't make any sense. It looks like stubbornness, as he said earlier. But since after everything is said and done, it is Chachma, that's why the illumination that comes from it, which is number 2, leheyer b'kli hachachma, which with the intention for it to eventually go into the vessel of Chachma, harehu b'pchinas islapshus. Once it goes into the vessel, it becomes completely enclosed, v'his achtos, and it becomes unified b'kli hachachma, in the vessel of Chachma. So much so that it becomes limited like the vessel. For it to become similar and in the quality of the vessel. To that the light is no more comparative to its source. Once it goes into the vessel, it becomes like the vessel. Not only like the vessel, it joins the vessel. It becomes enmeshed in the vessel. It becomes limited, defined, and so forth. Like we said, that our abstract intelligence of our soul that's above our body becomes completely metamorphosized when it's in our brain, so much so that we have no clue what our soul's intelligence is, even though, think about it, your soul's intelligence is the way you intellectualized for thousands of years, as long as your soul was in existence. And yet we have no recollection of that. We don't even know what that is. Because it's not part of our human experience. It's closed off from us. Because our oir is already in a keli. V'zeu inyan, and this is the idea, shechachmei Allah, and that's why we say that supernal chachma, einoi be'erech legab chachma stima. When we say that the chachma ilah, which is in the divine level, okay, in the 10 Sefirot, chachma ilah is the supernal chachma. We say that it has no comparison at all to chachma stima. That's when the oir went into the keli. When the oir of chachma, when the light of chachma went into the vessel of chachma, then it doesn't have any, it's inconsequential, it doesn't have any similarity to the chachma as it is above. However, he's going to explain soon that when the light of chachma prior to it going into the keli, if it's pure just light, of course it has a relationship to its source. It's only a ray of it, but it's still similar to it, as we're going to see. We're going to get there soon. And like the human intelligence. Like once our seichel, once our godly intelligence, or our soul intelligence, is processed through a physical brain, then you can't compare it at all. that cannot be in any way compared to the intelligence and the grasping of the soul when the soul is above the body, divested of the body. As we said, even though this has been our intelligence for so many years, we have no recollection of what that is. Which to us is compared, to us would be, even if we would see that type of experience, or it wouldn't feel like intelligence, because it's like above seichel towards seichel. It's not even considered seichel. It's not considered, doesn't have the flavor. It's such a pure experience above the definitions of intelligence. And the reason for that, all of it is as follows. Meaning, the reason for its distance is in a sense the opposite because of its closeness. It's like an interesting dance he's playing over here. The reason why our intelligence, the Oyer HaChachma, when it goes into the body, into the brain, becomes so metamorphosized and becomes so body-like, why doesn't it stay in its abstraction? Is because it's already tainted before it comes into the brain. And why is it tainted? Because its source is not pure abstraction, because the source of Chachma is Chachma, but essential Chachma. So it's interesting how it works. The very idea that it's similar and it's close is what makes it be so far once it goes into the vessel. It's almost like an upside down logic over here. Vasibel is that, but it does make sense. Vasibel is that, and the reason is because also the intelligence of the soul, it is seichel. It's just a complete higher type of seichel. Al came, therefore, aharasa, a ray of that intelligence of the soul, shenimshach b'moyach, that goes into our physical brains. Naso becomes b'pchenas seichel, becomes the vessels accentuate and highlight and bring out the very subtle seichel notes and makes it into a very thick seichel. And it becomes similar to the substance of the physical brain. Litvais, to be able to now, from now, hence and forward, once it's operating through the gray matter of our head, rak mahuz davar gashmi, to be able to grab onto only the substances of physicality, and we lose completely touch with the grasping and the world of the spiritual, because our intellect becomes so, I don't have it, for lack of the better word, physicalized. But the reason it's able to, that's the point. The reason our physical brains are able to do such a job on a spiritual force is because they get married to each other. And the reason they're married to each other is because they're cut out for each other. And the reason they're cut out, which indicates that even in its abstract state, it has a relationship. It is chachma. If it wouldn't be chachma, it would just be pure, simple water. It would be pure energy without any definition. It would be clear with utter clearing. Then it will always remain what it is. It's because it is already chachma. That's why when it goes into the vessel can kind of swallow it. The vessel is able to swallow it, absorb it, and make it part of a vessel. So litvais rak mahuz davar gashmi. It then can only grab something physical, ubadavar rachni. And when it comes to spirituality, we don't know the spiritual, as we spoke yesterday. We only know about. As we spoke yesterday, we can know the measurements and the specs of the spiritual, but we don't know it anymore. Toifes rak hamatzias levad. It only grabs the existence of it. V'hainu, masha sharsha yumekoiroi, and the reason for that is because in its root and in its source, hugam came bepchenas seichel. Since it is also seichel, zuhu, all the way up to chachmas tima, meaning it's not just the light. Is the light again? There's three levels. Not only is number two a radiance of seichel, but even number one, which means the intelligence as it is in the soul, is also seichel. It's also intelligence. It's just very, 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 very lofty intelligence, but it's intelligence. That's why its ray that comes from it is also intelligence. And that for that very reason, when it goes into a thick vessel, it will become swallowed by the vessel and it will transform and become very vesselable. But this is the reason. That its ray, when it becomes enclosed in a keli, it will become like the substance of the vessel. And it's no more. And now it kind of became so disconnected from her source, so much so that we say that Chachma, compared to Chachma Stima, have no connection. Yesh me'ayin, and it's something from nothing. As if you don't even see in it, as if it's like the sources of something else completely. Ikemotion is bar le'el, and like we explained earlier, now it's a parenthesis in a parenthesis. Ba'asage Shammai v'Hillel, that in the grasping of Shammai and Hillel, shenasa etzlam asvara b'pchinas chesed gehura. Why does this pure abstract idea become so tainted with emotion that once Shammai and Hillel process it, it becomes driven by kindness or driven by discipline? The reason for this, that in the very reasoning of the teacher of Shmaya and of Talion, in their very teachings, there is in a hidden way the hidden notes of kindness and severity. It's only that Shammai and Hillel pick it up and they bring it out and they process it, and now it becomes a force of kindness or a force of thing, which and the only reason it's able to become that way is because in its source it's already there in a subtle way. And the same is regarding the supernal Chachma to the Chachma Stima, that the Chachma Allah is called a Keli. It's like a physical brain to Chachma Stima. And once the light comes from Chachma Stima, from the concealed Chachma into Chachma Allah, it's radically changed and it's radically limited, so much so that it doesn't have any erech, doesn't have any connection. And just like the root and the source of Chachma, even though it is also wisdom, it's considered completely simple and non-Chachma. In comparison to the when you compare it to the revealed Chachma, to the full experience, this is called logic, and this I don't know what it is. And like we said earlier, when God says, "Be silent," this is what arose in my thought, but you can't. This will look to you like it's stubborn because we can't even communicate. There's no dialogue over here because to you it'll look like I'm totally being crazy. God is saying, but really, there's no space at all in the revealed Chachma. There's no possibility in it. There is a reason. Of course, there's a reason. And that is because the reason and the wisdom of Chachma Stima, is considered completely super rational or irrational, even though it's super rational. Agluya in compared to the revealed Chachma. Kaniskaliel, as we said before. The same is also true b'pchinasa or the Chachma. So just like it is in Chachma Stima itself, on level 1, that level 1 is completely separated from level 3. The light of Chachma, level 2, the light that comes forth. Even though when it goes into the vessel, it metamorphosizes and it becomes like the vessel itself. However, in its essence, in essence, it's still considered without substance, legaba akeli, in compared to the vessel. The vessel is considered substance. On the vessel, you can say it is chachma, but on the oir, the light of it, you can't say it's chachma. It doesn't look like chachma. That's why it says regarding the 10 spheros that they are belima. It's referring to the lights. The lights are belima. They don't have the substance of chesed. Although when they go into the vessel, they become literally tainted like the vessel. Okay, we're going to leave it over here because I want to end. I'm already over time. But let's Mashiach come today, and Be'ez Hashem, all this will be illuminated, and then we'll continue after Mashiach is here already. How about that? I like that.